Okay, now we're going to put the rest of the elevation in place. So that means getting these mullions going. Let's take a look at this photo first before we begin. So in our photo, we can see that we've got these 1, 2, 3, 4 horizontal mullions that line up with our mullions on our first elevation that we did that was all glass. Let's move across, and then as we've got this solid piece, we can see that there's the top two that carry through, and we've still got some vertical ones that carry above that. Then we've got this little break here that's solid, and then we've got this whole separate area. So strategically, the way I would break this down is I'm going to work on this section last. I'm going to work on lining these, getting the pieces together that I already know where they line up. So I know that we've got some elements that line up just right here. So let's work on those first. Okay, so let's look at this model here. Using my tape tool, actually, before I do that, we've got a lot of guides here and lines that we don't need. So I'm going to edit, delete guides, just get rid of what I don't need. I want it to be really, it's really not important for me to hang on to guides if I don't need them. They're really disposable. They're really just there for when I'm using them, and once they're done, I can go ahead and delete them because they create a lot of visual chaos. So let's take the tape measure tool. Sorry, not the bucket tool. So I'm going to take the tape measure tool here. I'm going to double click on these lines to just project them straight across. Now I want to go ahead and I want to find a vertical line that I can use for reference. The easiest one for me right now is the blue axis, but I've also got these vertical lines all here that I could easily snap to. And I'm just going to pop to this top point right there. Now I'm going to drag a guide from that 8 inches out into space. So we'll have a little bit of an overlap on the outside, but we'll never see that, so I'm not worried about it. Because again, this model is not to be looked at from the outside. This is just for us to look at it from inside. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my rectangle tool to drag a point from this point to that point. Double click on it. Hit G to make it a group. And in this case, I want to make this a component because I want to be able to push-pull this all in one gesture and get it push-pulled all the way across. We will go ahead and make them unique after the fact, but for now, I'm going to make it into a component. All right. Now I'm going to activate my Move tool and copy one from this point here. I'm zooming out and I'm zooming back in and I'm matching it to this point there. Click. So that's the first one of 3 copies I need. So I will hit ×3, enter. Then I will drag. Actually, you know what? That's it. We're going to stop right there because I believe that this part from here up is solid. So now what I can do is open up any of these by double-clicking, activate my push-pull, and pull it all the way across. And for now, I'm just going to pull it all the way to the edge. I'm sure that these are going to eventually come in further than that, but this is just getting me started. Okay, so that's kind of that's step 1 of getting my horizontal mullions dragged across. Now I'm going to hit delete guides again, Shift D, or edit delete guides. Now I'm going to work on my horizontal piece, my horizontal mullion. And that is on an angle. So I actually have this shape here in place to help me draw that. So I'm going to use, instead of a rectangle for this one, I'm going to use my line tool. I'll start at the bottom corner. Notice I get nice and close. And I click from the end point on the inside. I'm dragging it straight across on the green axis, and I'm clicking to that opposite edge, because this I already know is 8 inches deep. Now I'm going to go up, zoom around, and this time I'm going to get nice and close, because if I don't get really close, I'm going to accidentally probably pop to this outside point. I actually really want to hit that inside intersection right there. So I'm going to click to that inside intersection just underneath, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to drag it all the way out, and instead of clicking to this point, this is kind of important because I'm going to get a weird shape if I don't. Instead of clicking to this point, I'm clicking all the way to this point here. You can kind of start to see how important it is to really be comfortable zooming in and out and getting nice and close to what it is you're drawing as you're drawing it, so that you have a nice, clean model. Now I'll click to that bottom endpoint right there. go ahead and activate my select tool, double click on it, make it a group. Double click to open it up. We know that this is 2.5 inches thick, just like the other ones. So 2.5, enter. Now let's get these placed. I have some guides here in the form of this grid that's been mapped out that I can start to follow, and I can also use this to verify the spacing. So I really like these grids because the grids are a great kind of like overall indicator of whether or not the plan you're working off of is accurate. So if I'm starting at the first point by dragging a tape from one edge to that point, kind of like we did at the very beginning just to get the grid started, I'm going to do another tape off of that and type in 20 feet, enter. And that pops to my next guide point. Now here we've got to switch up in the sizing. So this is now 20'3". So let's go ahead and type same thing, start from this edge with a tape, click once, drag it along the red, 20 feet 3, enter. Okay, good. So this is showing me that I've got some good lines here, or some good information in which to follow. Another 20 feet, enter. And I'm not as worried about this last one because we've already got that wall in place. Again, we're not going for scientific accuracy. We're really just trying to build this model up to make it look like the building that already exists. If we were working off of our own plans, we'd have accurate plans that we could just draw straight off of, and we'd know everything was down to the fraction of an inch correct. So we've got this F9 line that gives us a good kind of center point for this mullion, and we've also got this one at E9. When I look at this elevation, I can see that my verticals are equally spaced and one runs straight through where the door will be. So I have to keep that in mind because I can't see that on the plan. On the plan, it's open because there's a door there and we're cutting through the door. So I got to keep in mind that there's going to be a vertical mullion, or I should say kind of like a slanted mullion that also falls at this point. This one here and this one here are actually the lines of the piece that surrounds the door. So I'm actually going to ignore those for now. Just like we did on this side, I'm going to cut those doors in later. So let's make these into components. Make component. Just so that as we move them across, we can work with them, and they will act the way we want them to, and what we do to one will happen to all of them. And this is kind of a little tricky because my guides are actually 8 inches or 7¼ inch lower. So as I start to drag this first one across, I have to hold on to the shift key. So let me go to my move tool. So I activated my move. I want this to be centered, so I'm going to get nice and close to this line and make sure that it's on the midpoint. And I'm going to start to drag it across along the red. Now I'm going to hold shift down so that the shift key is activated. And I start to notice that it's a little bit tricky to touch that line. So now what this tells me is that I'm going to want to move this line up into place so that it's sitting just below. So let's go ahead and grab this guide. Or let's zoom way out, select these 4 guides, and move them up along this blue axis using the piece of geometry that's already in place. So move it up nice and clean. Okay. Now I can select my slanted mullion, activate my move tool and select it at its midpoint, hold shift and move it along, and now it'll pop right onto that line. Click. So now I'm going to want to drag. I want to verify, instead of going to this little midpoint here that's kind of halfway through, I want to take it all the way to this point here so that I can get the most even spacing possible. So let me take my move tool once again. This time I'm going to click and I'm going to make a copy by hitting my Option, Alt, or Control button. Drag it all the way along the red until I pop to that midpoint there. Now I'm going to divide this by how many spaces. Let's see. I know I've got 1 here. I've got 2, 3, because remember there's actually supposed to be 1 in the middle of the door, so I'm at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So backslash or divide by 8, enter. And that's going to project them, or it's going to give me a division of 8 spaces. Now I can double click on these to make sure that every time I open one up, they are the same piece, which is exactly what I want. And we've got a few more here that we don't see on the plan. Let me look at this photo. We've got a few more that continue along above this spa area. So let me go ahead and select this. This time I'm going to do a multiple copy using my move tool, but instead of divide, I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to start from this reference point, zooming nice and close, looking at this endpoint, and I'm going to hit my copy button. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and start to drag it along this axis and click to that point. And now let's just do some guessing here. Let's do times 5. Let's see how many that takes us. Looks like we need to do a few more. Times 7. Times 7 looks like it works. Okay. Now clearly we're going to want to cut these. This is not the right spacing for this. So let's make this one unique by right-clicking on it and going to Make Unique. Double-click on it to open it up. Let's make a line right along the top using that top plane as a reference so that I have dissected this face from this face. Okay, now I'm going to push-pull this away until it disappears. Now this is still its own component. If I make a copy of it, let me just make a quick little copy off to the side. This is now a component of this. So this was unique for itself, but any copies I make of this unique component, all the copies of it are now also still a component. So you don't need to go back in and make it a component. So let me delete that one. I'm going to make a copy here, and I'm just going to copy this straight along until I overlap this existing piece, because I'm just using this piece as a reference. It's going to be gone soon. I want to make 1, 2, 3 more. So times 3. Now I can go ahead and select the ones I don't need and delete them. I'm just selecting and hitting my delete key. I want to make this one unique as well, because I don't want this to penetrate this piece here. So I'm going to right click, make unique, double click to open it up, get nice and close and make a line right along that top point where those two pieces intersect. Hold shift down and drag so that I'm touching that opposite line and click. Okay, now I can activate my push-pull tool and push-pull this down into oblivion. Okay, last but not least, let's put this piece into place. So I'm going to start here from this line. I've already got this as a reference point. I don't need to do any more measuring now because I know that these match up. So I'm going to draw a line straight down along that blue axis, and I'm going to drag a line along the green, and I'm just going to type in 8 because I know that it's 8 inches deep. Now I'm going to drag along the blue axis, and when I say drag, I basically just mean move my mouse. Hold shift down so that blue is locked, and move my cursor over to touch the opposite corner here. Click. Now I'm going to finish this shape off by clicking like that. Double click on it, make it a group. Double click to open it up. Push pull. Zoom way out and just drag this all the way to the edge here and touch like that. And click. Okay. Last but not least, we've got this to deal with. And this is probably a little further than we want. I'll bet you this one is not, I'll bet you this piece over here is not the same spacing because we've got that unique shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this, I'm going to delete this guy because we don't want him anymore. Delete that. I'm going to select this with a copy here and hold shift down until I touch this edge. And I'm going to let it, end up at the edge of this so that these pieces terminate into the edge of that. All right, let's go ahead and select. I don't think we need these guides anymore. I'm not going to select them to delete them. I'm going to just do an Shift D or Edit Delete Guides. Okay, and the last but not least, let's go ahead and let's put a guide here with the tape. Double click on this point, and let's select this wall and hide it just so it's out of the way for a second. I know that I now need another mullion here that's lined up with these. So if I take if I give myself another guide using the tape by double clicking on this line, I now have a guide here I can pop to. So again, we know that this is 2.5 by 8. So if I start from that inner guide, I can type in 8, enter, select my rectangle tool, and pop to that inner point there. So I've got a new mullion started. Double click to select that and make it a group. We'll probably make this a component too because we've got 2 on either side. Select this shape and using the corner, copy it over to this point. Pop that into place. I'm not really going to be that worried about what's happening on the plan because we've got the information we know we need. Now I can select the other one and let's go ahead and move those up 7.25 because that's how deep this piece is below. And let's take a look at how high that is. It looks like it goes way higher. In fact, it goes higher than we're probably going to see once we're standing in this model. So I'm just going to open those up, push-pull one of them, and just match to the top of this to this existing wall. We've also got some alignment here with our horizontal mullions. So when I go ahead and close this, I can use these mullions as reference. So from the bottom, I'm going to do 2.5. Again, I'm going from the bottom of this point, straight up, 2.5. Take a rectangle and go from one corner to the next. A lot of this is repetition. Make a group, open it up, push-pull it to match this point. I'm going to select this and I'm going to make this a component because I know that I've got the same thing happening as I move up. Now I'm orbiting around a little bit so that as I move this up into place, I can match what I know is already existing. So if I hold shift down again as I move this up, I can touch this point and I know that I'm at the height that I need to be. Click. I don't have to do any measuring here. I can do the same thing again by hitting copy, move, holding shift down, and going to this point here. Let's see, where can I get a good point? There we go. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I'm holding shift down and I'm touching this point where these two intersect. Click. And I'll just make sure over here that these are matching up because this is that same line. Okay, perfect. Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a copy, move it up, and match that point there. Zoom in a little bit. Click. And I'm going to do ×3. Just let that go all the way up until it kind of disappears from view. Okay. Lastly, on this one, let's just fill in this gap here. I'm going to take a line, my line tool, because this is obviously not going to be an exact rectangle shape. Make sure that this is nice and flush against this, which it is. So I've got some nice intersections as I go here. I can start from this point, click to that point. Then I can click to this point here and drag straight across until I hit that point. And down. I'll go ahead and double click on that and make it a group. Phew! All right. Let's go ahead and Shift U or Edit Unhide All and Shift D or Edit Delete Guides. We have basically got almost all of our walls in place.